Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
I am a woman. I was not born a woman.
I have a really bad temper.
Okay, and also, I'm still waiting for you to Google the facts that you can't seem to find. Is there an issue? Okay.
This is extremely distressing to me.
Whoa.
Hey. Stop.
Anyone who has a period has a period.
Right, so if you biologically have a penis, can you get a period?
I'm not answering that question.
You don't have to be born a woman to be born with a uterus.
Savanah Hernandez is a reporter, YouTuber, and producer for the show Slightly Offensive. You can find her on Instagram at Sav with one N, and on Parler and YouTube as Sav Says. And don't forget to like and share this video. And if you've got the time, please go to rebelnewsstore.com and you can use the promo code Andrew10 for a discount. And you can get all sorts of fancy stuff like this mug right here. And I know Savanah told me before she loves mugs, so we're going to make sure she gets one. How are you, Miss Hernandez?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. It's nice to finally speak with you. The first thing I like to get out of the way is how I first heard about a person or how they became on my radar. I think the first thing I saw you doing was those videos. It said Action 7 News or something on your microphone. I think a lot of people wonder, was that just a play to get people to talk to you? Was there actually an Action 7 News in Texas? I'm not sure. How did that go?
So whenever I was first starting out on my reporting, I was working with InfoWars, and I started off as a production assistant with them. But of course, the name InfoWars had a bit of a negative connotation when it came to the liberals on the street, and a lot of people would end up attacking me for it. And, funny story too, before I started working there, I had gotten my degree in journalism out of college. I was having a really rough time just trying to find a job in the media, as I'm sure many up-and-coming journalists have experienced trying to get into the industry. And so I started off there as a production assistant, but I really had just a passion to go out and report, talk to people, and figure out what the general consensus was on the ground when it comes to politics. So I'd take the InfoWars mic out, I would get attacked. And so we created Action 7, which was like my own brand and my own, reporting, channel and whatnot. So that way I could go and actually talk to people and get their real opinion on political topics without the angry bias attached to the name of InfoWars.
For sure, yeah, that's a problem a lot of us run into up here too. But I think probably in your experience is the same as ours, where they have a problem with you, but they can't really explain why. It's just somebody else told them something, and I don't know. It's a whole thing that I think happens with a lot of places. I mean, they do it with Fox News. They've probably never watched it. And then they think CNN is good, which they've probably not watched either. Have your political views always sort of been the same? Did you have like a red pilling? Did you have a moment where you're sort of started to shift that you can remember?
Definitely. So before I started working with Alex and with Owen Schreier and everyone 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I didn't know anything about politics. I was one of those college students where you could have asked me, what are the 3 branches of government? And I would have had no idea. But after, listening to political podcasts, working in the industry, and then just myself actually moving to a Democrat-run city, I moved to Austin, Texas, and our mayor was a Democrat, and I watched him pass a homeless ordinance, which made camping for the homeless legal everywhere. I watched the crime rates go up. I watched our tourism industry just completely plummet. And I watched the entire city just deteriorate because of these bad policies passed by that Democrat mayor. So it was a big mix of actually paying attention to politics for the first time, and also living in a Democrat city and seeing what Democrat leadership looks like in action.
So a lot of people probably started, like myself, started to see you on the InfoWars and doing the streeters, and you built up, I think from like your riot coverage and obviously the streeters too, which I just mentioned, you started building up a really huge Twitter audience, probably bigger than, I don't want to say any names, but bigger than a lot of people. And then they banned you for some reason. I never caught what the actual reason was.
Yes, Andrew, I got banned, and I'm still so upset about this because now I'm stuck on Instagram and Parler, and Instagram's just not my favorite platform in the world. I've never even wanted to post selfies, and I just feel like it's pointless. I love Twitter. It was definitely my platform because I always love commenting on, breaking stories, sharing news, and then riot coverage as well. And that's how I was able to amass a following because I started riot coverage back in Hong Kong in 2019. And then from there, I just continued following a lot of the riots, the BLM protests, against the lockdown protests around the country here. And, would get retweeted by President Trump. And at the first Million MAGA March, I got retweeted by President Trump. It was this beautiful video of, hundreds of thousands of Americans singing the national or the Star Spangled Banner in unison. It was a beautiful scene. President Trump retweeted it, got almost 10 million views. And then I followed that up with all of the attacks from BLM and Antifa on innocent Trump supporters and their families throughout the night. And after that, I was suspended from Twitter. I didn't even know I was suspended. It was my first day off in 14 days. So I wasn't on Twitter at all that day. And it was later that night that I finally said, okay, well, let's see what's going on in the news today. And I couldn't get on my account. And I actually had to get my friends to go look for my account for me because I couldn't access it. I didn't get any email. I didn't get any warning that I was suspended. And they just told me my account was gone. I never had any prior suspensions or anything like that. They just wiped the entire account. So
what happens after that? Do you immediately try to find a way to work around that? Do you just say, like, this sucks and you got to start doing on your other, working on your other platforms more? What's your immediate reaction to when that happens? Obviously, that's never happened to me, so just curious.
Definitely start going onto different platforms. I've started live streaming on my YouTube channel now. I used to do all my live streams on Twitter or my Instagram, but I've just realized how important it is to expand out to other platforms. And I do believe that I'm going to get banned on YouTube as well and Instagram one day just because of how strict they are with language and what you can and cannot speak about. But I really just don't have a filter. And I feel like, when it comes to the election fraud or just all the discrepancies in this election or the obesity epidemic or the fact that there's only two genders, this is all truth and this is all stuff that we should be able to talk about without fear. I should be able to talk about China. I should be able to talk about the people in our government who are corrupt without being censored. So the important thing is to just branch out onto other platforms. Parler, of course, Rumble, I'm going to be branching out to as well, because those are areas that you can still speak freely. But, it was very difficult because, again, Twitter was how I broke news. Twitter was how I got on Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, was able to go out and report to other people what was going on the ground. It was how I was able to show the American public what was really going on the streets of America because the mainstream media wouldn't report on it, and now that's been taken away. So definitely branching out to other social media, but there's only so much I can do at this point.
Now, I think the counter to that is, and personally, just last night I was having this conversation with one of my friends who isn't, we don't agree on a lot of these subjects. Now, what he would say and what I think a lot of people would say is, well, these platforms, it's basically the First Amendment argument, right? Or the personal business right there where they say, well, if you don't like Facebook, you don't like Twitter, you can start your own or you can go onto a different platform. What's your response to that argument? Because it's something that I see a lot and they're not really accounting for whether you want to take it as a literal monopoly or a figurative one. They certainly have a stranglehold on who gets to say what. And in my opinion, when you get government leniency with Section 230, I believe?
Yes.
Where they act as a platform, but they don't actually act as a platform. They're publicizing or acting as a publisher in so many ways. They're editorializing and everything. What is your response when, I'm sure people have said that to you in response to your Twitter ban, haven't they?
Definitely, and I've gotten a lot of people too who are just haters of my content. They don't even know how I got my start, and they say, you know, you probably got banned because of hate speech. Well, first things first, and you know, it's an unpopular opinion, but hate speech is free speech. I've never said anything hateful, you know, unless only women can get periods is a hateful statement.
That's pretty hateful, Savanah. Let's
It
slow
is
down
pretty,
there.
yeah, I know. The bigotry is off the chains. I know. I'm sorry that I'm bringing this negative energy to your podcast. But, you know, people try to say that you should be banned because of hate speech, or you should be banned because of this or that, and my response to that too is, like you said, with Section 230 of the Communications Act, that's my biggest thing. Big tech is specifically protected by this act to not be held liable for what people say on their platform, but in return, they can't act like a publisher, right? Mm-hmm. Them censoring people and them kicking people off. And, you know, it is primarily conservatives because they do ban liberals, and there are, you know, people on the left that do get banned as well. But when push comes to shove, it is primarily conservative voices who are being banned. Because if you look at anything that has happened with politics, for example, let's look at Russian collusion versus the Hunter Biden story, right? Russian collusion was pushed on YouTube for 4 years. But as soon as the Hunter Biden story comes out, that's shadow ban. You can't share the links on Twitter. The way that these stories and the dissemination of this information when it comes to specific topics, when it comes to the left or the right, it's very, very different. And we need to be able to speak about all of these topics, because right now it really does feel like we're living in communist China, because it really is big tech and the media who are regulating what we are allowed to see and therefore what we believe.
Yeah, especially with the new YouTube restrictions saying you basically can't question the election results or we'll just delete it without cause. I think once they took the steps to just delete things without having to no appeal process, without really having to tell you, and they've been doing that for a couple years for certain things that they didn't like. I think it started with the Vegas stuff is when they started doing that. Anything around terrorist events or something of that nature could be automatically deleted. And I do think it's definitely a big problem now. You mentioned that you built up a lot of your audience from covering these protests. Something that I wanted to ask you, which, I mean, it could be classified as fun to talk about. What's your worst experience at one of these protests? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? The one that comes to mind first for me is you're standing on the corner holding a sign. I forget what it says, but you're holding, I think it was a pro-police sign or something. And it ended up getting to the point where it ends up getting to the point where people are trying to push you out into the street. Is there something worse than that? Other than people trying to push you into oncoming traffic, is there something worse that's happened to you at one of these events?
Well, and I would say too that I differentiate that into my activism as opposed to my reporting. So I think I could have a story for each. But in terms of my activism, if you want to say that that's one of the worst things that I guess so. To me, I view that as pushing back against communism in my own country and standing up on the streets of America where I have the right to have my freedom of speech and be heard. And if anything, what that video showed was it exposed just how cruel and how just disgusting Black Lives Matter and Antifa are, to be quite honest with you. They are intent on silencing Americans. They're not about peace, love, and unity or equality for anyone. I'm a Hispanic Asian woman, and I had men pushing me down. So in terms of, I guess, the activism side of things, yeah, that one wasn't my favorite. I got my hair pulled out in the back of my head. I got pushed into the streets. I was getting screamed at by a mob of people because I was silently holding a sign that said, "Police Lives Matter." And this was at the beginning of the year when the police were just taking so much heat for, being police officers and trying to keep our city safe. This was when BLM was at their peak. So that was for activism. In terms of reporting, I was reporting on an Antifa march in Austin, Texas, and this was after they defunded our police department. I was marching along with him, and I'm usually in black box so that way I can record without being recognized and attacked. And at some point in the night, this grown man calls out my name, and they figured out who I was on a dark street, and I had probably 10 to 12 people punching me and kicking me and pushing me down.
Oh, I remember. This is when they broke your phone? Or stole your phone?
Yeah, they stole my phone and they were trying to punch me. But the thing about Latino women is that they hit back, and I don't think they were expecting that because I got out of that without a scratch on my face. My phone was stolen, and I had a few cuts and bruises, and it was not a fun experience. My neck was sore for a couple days after just because they tried to whip me around, and again, I had grown men pushing me down to the ground. But outside of that, if Antifa and BLM attack you, punch back because they'll back up. So I have to say, any.
I was going to say, at the one with the sign, I think you came off looking pretty tough, so I don't think you have anything to worry about there. There's not going to be any celebrity boxing matches with you, I don't think.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Hopefully so, maybe. That could be worth a lot of money. How do you see, we're talking about all this stuff about you being attacked for your opinion, and obviously Antifa and BLM don't really want to talk, at least in my experience. How do you feel the political discourse moving forward, especially if it turns out that Biden is the winner in the election? Do you think things get worse? Do you think they stay the same? Do you think people stop caring because the news isn't pushing so much ridiculousness every day because they want to protect Biden?
I think that, well, let me start out with where we are right now. And again, I've been in DC over the past couple of months, so I've actually witnessed what the feeling is towards Trump supporters, and I do think that this will get worse. After the Million MAGA March, the initial one, we're talking women and children, the elderly in the street with the MAGA hat on. It was like a bull seeing red, right? If these BLM or Antifa people saw a Trump flag, a Trump hat, or an American flag, they were out for blood, and they were attacking anyone on the street with a Trump hat. And I think that feeling towards Trump supporters is only going to get more and more emboldened by the fact that Joe Biden is going to be in office, or if he does get into office. And I think it's going to turn into demonizing Trump supporters and making us all seem like we're crazy for thinking that there was many discrepancies in this election. Trump supporters aren't going to take this city down, and they're going to continue to fight for Trump, and they're going to continue to support Trump because they really liked this president. They liked everything that he did for this country, and they're not going to stop wearing their Trump hats or waving their American flags. And what it's going to turn into is Antifa and BLM and the media gearing all of their power towards Trump supporters and demonizing them. And we are going to be a very attacked class of people. So I only see this getting worse and them getting emboldened, which is very unfortunate. But based on what I've seen on the streets and based on the general feeling and attitude towards Trump supporters and what we're already seeing in the media of Joe Biden preaching peace and unity, and then the media and people a part of Joe Biden's administration calling us a bunch of effers or saying that Trump supporters don't even try to ration with them because they're crazy. These are all things that are already being said, and Joe Biden hasn't even gotten into office.
Well, remember, we're supposed to come together now. If you're listening to the Twitter overlords, also I guess if any of the YouTube censors are watching, we could put up an "All Hail Biden" banner here, just so we're not taking down for this now. I know
we could just start waving BLM flags in the show, and then they couldn't take us down because now it would be discrimination, right? That's how that works.
Oh, somebody I know has a BLM flag in their window, not because they support them, just so that their house doesn't get damaged. Exactly.
Yeah.
2021, if Joe Biden's president, what are you hoping for? Is there anything we can hope for? Do you hope for gridlock so that it actually doesn't progress in a more progressive manner? Do you hope for something else? What's your best case scenario here if Biden's president?
My best case scenario, I don't know if I have a best case scenario. I haven't even, I don't think there is a best case scenario because when push comes to shove, if Joe Biden gets into office, China owns America at this point, and Joe Biden, is a puppet for a lot of other people behind the scenes, and they're going to be using Joe Biden for their own interests. We're going to get back into all of these bad trade deals that cost America billions of dollars. I don't see it being a good thing. I essentially see it as like a third Obama administration, essentially. So I don't really see a best case scenario because these people are incompetent. I hate to be, blunt, but I don't feel like Democrats have very good policies. I think that they're living in la la land. And, people always say that if you're not a liberal by the time you're 20, you don't have a heart. But if you're not a conservative by the time you're 30, you don't have a brain. That's very true, because I understand that, the basis of a lot of democratic policies are based on wanting to help people, but in reality, they don't work. And Joe Biden is just so corrupt. And we've seen that again with just Hunter Biden, his ties, Joe Biden, the fact that he said that Hunter is the smartest person that he knows.
Of course.
Just a month ago, we saw Hunter Biden with a meth pipe, hanging out of his mouth. Like, what's going on in America right now? What is going on with our government?
Now, Savanah, it's not clear whether that was meth or crack. We're not exactly sure. Let's not.
I'm fake news. You're right.
Let's not cast stones in a glass house, okay? Savanah Hernandez. Sav with one N, by the way, everybody. That's the number one. It helps whenever I spell your name. I remember that. It's not with two N's. That would be a travesty. We've talked about everything that's going to get us censors anyway. We might as well talk about the lockdowns and how you feel about them. Texas, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the more open ones. I'm guessing Florida is the most open. Here we just entered a new lockdown, a new provincial-wide, which is statewide lockdown. And they're going to finally close the border and start testing people at airports. We've been having flights from China. They never stopped. And from all over the world. Finally, we're stopping places from flying here, like the UK for some reason, because they're afraid of the second strain. How do you feel about your lockdowns? I'm fairly certain in saying that you're an open everything girl. What's been your reaction to all this? And what's the reason?
So I have been saying this since March, that we should have never shut down our businesses, that we should have never willingly worn these face masks. I'm very anti-face mask, anti-lockdown, and anti-COVID as a whole. And I say this because, one, so I just got my tonsils out, Andrew. That's why our interview was actually a little bit delayed. We were supposed to do this last week. And because I got my surgery, I had to get a COVID test. Now, I have been to every single anti-lockdown protest, a BLM riot, and I've been to various cities and states across the nation since the beginning of lockdown. I never, ever stopped working. And when I don't have to wear a face mask, I don't. So the majority of these rallies that I went to, I didn't wear masks. Now, I tested negative for COVID and the antibodies, meaning I haven't had COVID, so I don't have the antibodies or anything like that. So when the media is telling us that this is an extremely contagious disease, I'm not seeing that, because I lived my life normally this entire year. I even went grocery shopping back in June and July without a face mask, and I still didn't get COVID. So one, it's not as contagious as we're saying. Two, I have a grandfather who has pulmonary fibrosis. He was a Vietnam War vet. He got sprayed with Agent Orange. He has bad lungs. So he's the most at risk to die from COVID-19 if he's exposed to it. So I went and I visited him several times this year. I was really nervous initially, but then I said, okay, well, I don't think I have COVID. I feel fine. I'm going to go visit my grandpa. If this asymptomatic spread was real and it was killing off the elderly and the most at-risk groups, like they are saying that it is, my grandfather would have been dead. But we know that this has an over 99% survival rate. And the face masks don't work. That's why I'm anti-lockdown too, because I just really feel like the government has taken this entire situation and used it to keep people subservient and to keep people quiet. And we've seen that again with the face mask orders, with the lockdowns, with the fact that they said that businesses could open up and they could, have outdoor dining with people who sat 6 feet, 12 feet away from each other. And then the business owners complied. And then the politician said, oh, actually, you can't do that anymore. But I'm going to go spend Thanksgiving with my family and get a haircut and go to the gym and live my life normally. But you, the peons in society, cannot. So, to be quite honest with you, it's all been so hypocritical. It has not been backed by science. We're still wearing these face masks. When in the history of society have healthy people ever worn a face mask to stop a spread of a virus that they don't have? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So, yeah, I've just been extremely anti-lockdown since the beginning of all this because, again, too, I think number one, sorry, I went on a huge tangent there. The number one reason why is because unlike all of the people who are in their houses still collecting a paycheck, I have gone out on the street and interviewed the business owners and watched people cry as they say they can't provide for their family, they can't pay their bills, they can't pay their rent. I have personally spoken to so many people whose lives have been destroyed by this. And I have been following the news of how millions and millions of Americans have been going unemployed, how drug abuse is up, how alcohol abuse is up, how children being abused in the home is up. There's a record number of children who have died this year from domestic abuse. Why is that? Because of these lockdowns and these shutdowns. People are on edge. People are dying, not because of COVID, because of these lockdowns. So that's why I'm so against it.
No, as we sit here and speak, there's still no study that shows that the masks can prevent the spread of the virus. And if you even take it a bit further, they have done studies using the surgical masks in surgery rooms, and it hasn't even shown to help in that environment, which I think is kind of crazy. Now, when I think about, I'd like to challenge you on some of this, and when I do that, I just think about my one friend who's basically, we call him what do we call him? We call him establishment. I won't say his name, but we call him the establishment guy because every opinion he seems to have is in line with the establishment on this issue. Now, what he would say, I think, would be, well, what about all these deaths, Savanah? Do we just not care about it, or do we just say that this is a statistic we have to deal with? And what about the other countries in East Asia, if you believe their numbers, who have been wearing masks and flatten the curve, so to speak?
So let's go ahead and start off with the countries in Asia. So actually, and I did a live stream on this yesterday, COVID has been introduced to the world, and we've been living with COVID for over a year now, because I've been following this since November when it was first broke out in China, when they were silencing whistleblower doctors and when they were initially lying about their numbers. So I don't believe any of the numbers that is coming out of these Asian countries anyway. So that's how I would respond to that one. And then secondly, when it comes to the deaths that people are talking about, and I may be wrong on this one, but I was reading this graph that said that if you look at the amount of people who die in the US every single year, we're pretty much on track for the same amount of people to have died. Like, we don't have an exorbitant amount of people who have died in the US. And if you look at the number of death rate per this virus versus our population size, that's one thing that people always like to overlook. Earlier this year, our politicians were trying to compare us to South Korea in terms of the numbers of coronavirus tests that we were giving out. And they were saying, oh, like South Korea is doing so many more tests than us. Yes, because South Korea does not have the population size that we do. So when it comes to the numbers of deaths, you have to account for our population size. And you also have to account for the fact that people get run over by a car and then they account it as they died of COVID-19. So that's something else that a lot of people don't know about, is that everything is being counted as a COVID death, that hospitals were being paid more to care for COVID patients at the beginning of this. We never ran out of ventilators. We never had overrun hospitals. Even in these epicenter, areas, New York and California, that never happened. Because if you think about the fact too that Trump deployed the Navy hospital ships, I believe it was the Comfort and the Mercy back earlier this year, we never used those ships. They even did pop-up hospitals in New York. Those never got used. So again, I really think that, of course, one death is too many deaths, but how will we prevent? I feel like right now the lockdowns are causing more deaths instead of preventing them.
And something else I would add is the places like New York and New Jersey, and I think there's one other state, if possibly Pennsylvania, but I'll just stick with New York and New Jersey, where they had this terrible practice of sticking sick people into the long-term care homes. And I don't know about Texas, but here in Canada, as in the entire country, somewhere between 82 and 95% of the deaths are in long-term care homes. Now, the second end of that is so high because a news station has reported that, I'm being generous, they've reported that almost all of the deaths have come from long-term care homes, but it seems like a mistake. They haven't corrected it. But earlier statistics were 82% of the deaths in long-term care homes. And I'm just thinking about how downranked this episode is going to be from how much we're talking about this. We're hitting all the markers, Savanah. I'm pretty proud of us.
We're touching on every band subject. But that's my favorite thing to do, because I feel like that's one of the best ways that we can fight back, is by still speaking about these things, even though we know that they're off limits, if you will. That's why I want to start a Rebel account, so I can say that, only women can get periods and not get banned for it.
Well, you can say that on here if you'd like. I'm going to disagree with you. Everyone can have a period, Savanah. I don't know why you're being so hateful, but
I know.
So I'll try to leave you on this if we don't get stuck about talking about more censorious topics. What are your goals moving forward in terms of, you've got this great job, it's slightly offensive, you're still doing your YouTube channel. What are your goals moving forward, and overall, why do you want to do this? You mentioned a bit about standing up for your country when you see all these terrible policies being implemented where you live. Why do you want to do this, and where do you see yourself in, let's choose 5 years from now?
Okay, 5 years from now, I won't even go as far as 5 years. I'll just stick to just what I'm doing for the next couple of months. But I think right now, the most important thing that I can do and what many people can do is start up funds for small business relief. So right now I'm in the process of trying to just create a website where I can amass donations and reaching out to just one business owner, seeing out how I can help that business owner, and then helping them out and then branching it out from there, and just really trying to not only bring light to all of these business owners who have been really affected by this lockdown, but really trying to help them out. So that's a project that I'm working on behind the scenes. And then of course, riot coverage, protest coverage is something that I'm still going to be doing via Slightly Offensive. You'll still see some of my work. You guys won't know that it's me, but if you're watching this episode, you will. So a little exclusive there. And so let's still be doing that type of coverage because I think it's very important. Again, the media is constantly suppressing what's actually going on in the streets of America. And I think the easiest way to inform people directly of what's going on is via, live tweeting actual HD footage of what's happening on the streets. So coverage of everything that's going on, bringing light to that, continually speaking out. I'm going to start doing live streams on my YouTube channel, Sav Says, twice a week, where I just go over these news stories and I really just try to bring light to just the corruption of the government. I think a lot of people need to be woken up and need to realize the state of our country and the state of our nation and how the government truly feels about them, because right now, a lot of people think that the government is going to save them. So I just have been really intent on waking a lot of people up. And, a lot of people are really angry because Congress just passed this new COVID stimulus bill and Americans are getting $600 a piece. Well, maybe that's the slap in the face that Americans needed to wake up and realize the government doesn't care about you. You are not going to get your small business back, and you're never going to have to stop wearing a face mask until you decide that you want, that's what you want. And so I'm just constantly encouraging people to stand up for their rights and to realize the reality of the situation that we're in, that the power rests in the people, and that until just 3% of our country realizes that, we're never getting out of this. So.
You're wise beyond your years, Savanah. Let me just tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I guess I'll let you leave on this because when Elijah was speaking with me, he made some remarks that were very offensive to me. He said, Andrew, I didn't know you're Canadian. You sound like you're from Michigan or Wisconsin. Do you have any questions about Canada, and do I have an accent?
Accent? No. Honestly, when you were talking about your lockdown, I was like, is this man in Canada? Is he in America? I don't know. He sounds very American to me.
It's a blessing.
Canada questions. Can you send me some maple syrup? I feel like that's the most American thing to ask, but that's all I know about Canada. That
wow.
And a beautiful place.
Can you send me a cowboy hat from Texas? Maybe a Dallas Cowboys jersey?
Yes, I can actually.
Oh,
that's some of the greatest things we had here. And barbecue. I'll send you some barbecue too. Some barbecue sauce. I don't think the barbecue is in there.
I think I can send you, I probably can't send you beer. It's probably illegal to mail that. But I can definitely send you some fancy maple syrup. Savanah Hernandez, Instagram Sav with one N, the number one that is. YouTube Sav Says and Parlor Sav Says, and of course she's the producer and content creator with Slightly Offensive, which is on YouTube, and BlazeTV. Thanks a lot, Savanah. I appreciate your time. Last words?
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. I hope we can speak again. You and I are good friends now. We're connected on social media, and I'm glad that I have friends in the industry who are fighting to get out the information that's being suppressed by media and big tech right now. So keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot. I love you guys down there. You're doing a great job. Very proud of your studio and all your work and the show you guys are doing. So keep up the good work, and thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for watching another episode of Andrew Says. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go directly to rebelnews.com, and you can also find more of my content at Andrew Says on YouTube.